another chat with me and Oliver. We don't know how to title this yet, but I guess this is being kind of a regular thing, and I'm like really liking these kind of chats. So, welcome to another chat with Oliver and with Steven from Show It Better.
Yeah, pretty cool. Like, I'm really excited. As Steven said, we're trying to do this as a regular thing. Maybe bring on some guests that you guys suggest, guests that you have never heard about, or really famous ones. And this time we're talking with David, and we're going to jump into the theme of sketching like an architect, but also talk about the business side of it, and then go on to the audience questions and hear from you guys about what you have to say. What are your questions on this theme?
And this is like a very, very special guest that we're very excited for
Yep.
because this is not like your regular kind of architect. He has created, if you don't know, I think right now he has created like 3 books that are best-selling books like all over the world. He has done a ton of stuff. He's constantly doing workshops. He's gone to Madrid, Germany, etc., whatever. And right now he's here with us. He is also in Prague, I think, and we're very excited to talk to him. So prepare your questions because at the end we are going to ask him a ton of questions from all the spectrum of sketching, of the business side of his whole business of sketchlikeanarchitect.com, and also his personal life. Like if you want to know more about his personal life, then then just prepare. Just let's do it. So if you guys like this chat, remember to hit the like button. Also, remember to go to Oliver's channel upstairs because we're going to have chats over there as well. I don't know, maybe if each week, maybe bi-weekly, but we're going to try to bring in the most important guests for you guys, guests that maybe have a value proposal for architecture, have a different proposal of doing architecture. So I don't know. I'm really excited. What do you think, Oliver? Should we start?
Yeah, I think we're bringing value to this community. It's all about like creating the connection so that people that seem too far outreach, so that they you just hear from them from Instagram. Like we bring them here and talk about and explain all the details and learn about his or her journey. And I think today we're going to talk about maybe a problematic topic theme. So that is sketching like should be part of your daily routine as an architect, should be part of your skills or not. We know that it's important, but then you come into a firm and you don't actually draw every day. So I don't know. We're gonna get into that with David, and we're really excited to that.
All right. So on that note, let me welcome to you guys David Drazil. David, thank you so much for joining us in this chat, this informal chat that we're going to have for about an hour or so. What are you doing? What's up? How are you? How is your day? What are you up to right now?
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here with you. I'm a big fan of yours, and also we've become friends over time. So it's just such a pleasure to be here talking to you. And hello to everyone who is live with us in the chat or watching on YouTube. So I'm excited to talk about all things sketch like an architect, business things, personal life, whatever we go, which direction, whichever. So yeah, thanks for having me. It's really cool.
Pretty cool. I think we haven't had guests on sketching yet. We talked about competitions. We talked about portfolios reveals. We had Oliver Thomas from Big, but it's really excited to have someone that is really a master in sketching and does this both professionally and as a hobby.
And also, like, not only, well, he's a master in sketching, but he's also released books on how to actually sketch like an architect. I mean, like, we are architects, however, but I don't think we consider ourselves like great sketchers or whatever, or like enough, like with enough confidence to actually release 2 books or 3 books right now to teach people all over the world how to sketch like an architect. So I think that's a big feat in itself. And of course, I have 2 of the books right here, which David has sent me, and I think you guys can get them on Amazon, whatever. And he has a 3rd book right now about like I think 100 buildings that were like illustrated. Right? Can you tell us about that book?
That's right. Yeah, thanks. The new book, I just give it away in my giveaway, but it comes out actually in July, so it's like
okay.
What, 2-3 months. It's available for pre-order, but this book is a bit different because The first two books, they are part of the Sketch Like an Architect project, like beginners and advanced, and they are self-published, right? And we can talk about self-publishing and the part of the business. But this new book is like traditionally published with a major American publisher. So the whole process is completely different, and it also takes a lot longer. So we started working on that book last year in January, and it comes out this year in July, right? So it's such a long process. But yeah, it's basically 100 most iconic buildings in the world, buildings and structures, including towers, including some really famous bridges, and they are drawn like in step-by-step manner. And basically the goal of the book is to be as a reference guide, inspiration guide that you can really follow as an artist, as an architect, and have fun drawing some of the really coolest, most iconic buildings and structures all over the world. So it's been super fun to work on that. It took a lot of months to draw it up and to put it together. But we are getting close to the release. I think it's like the end of the July that it should come out.
That's pretty interesting. And well, you get to follow it step by step, and you can have exercises and practice. Pretty cool. Like I can only imagine that the drawing part of it may be just a little percentage of the process, and then you have all the business side of it and publishing and taking care of the details. That must be tough.
Like, how is that? Like being an architect, like when you graduated in 2015, 2014?
2020, well, what was it? 2016. Yeah, 2016.
Damn, you recently graduated, and right now you're just thinking about how to publish a book, how to like mass release a book, which is something that probably many of us don't get the opportunity as architects. We're just thinking about like how to solve that bathroom, how to actually design that wall or whatever, and you're like, all right, so how do I release my book? How do I design my next book? So it's so crazy, it's so exciting to see an architect do many kinds of stuff, and also like see it towards like your path, where you're trying to educate people that are from outside of the architectural world, trying to teach them and trying to bring them in, bring that passion in, which I think is super exciting. Like I would love to know much more about that process. And I think, but first we want to talk about the sketching part of it, because this is like a very big part of your world, and a big part also of architects, like sketching, digital sketching, how like meticulously sketching something in the process, whatever. So the first question that we have right now, which we've discussed with Oliver, is how important is sketching for an architect? Like nowadays, we are constantly told of its importance in school. Hey, you guys should always sketch. Don't stop sketching. But when we actually go into an architectural office, we find ourselves in a computer 8 hours a day with AutoCAD, with Revit, and sometimes we don't even have time to sketch. So it's kind of contradictory. Sometimes we're like, all right, so I thought I was going to be sketching my whole life, in these big desks, just trying to, dream up buildings. But how important is sketching for you, and from your perspective, taking into account like this whole change of generation of how architects are actually working in the offices?
And I'm gonna add on to the question just quickly. How can you implement the sketching into your workflow, even though based on your answer, like how can you make more sketching part of your daily process?
Yeah, right. I'll take it from my point of view, my perspective, and I'm not pushing to anyone that you need to sketch. But my point of view is that we as architects, we are really dependent on visual communication. No matter what it is, it's a drawing, it's a sketch, it's a visualization, it's a diagram, it's a video, it's a photography, whatever it is. We are very much trained and used to communicate our ideas in a visual way. So basically what I'm trying to share with my project and with the Sketch Like an Architect is not like, hey, you need to sketch. But what I'm trying to teach is basically clarity in visual communication. And I just happen to really believe, and that goes back to my experience, both in the Czech Republic and Denmark, and studying experience and working experience and everything combined. I just really believe that it all starts with the analog hand sketching, because that's where there is really instant connection between my hand and my mind. There is no like technical barrier. I don't need to operate with mouse and keyboard and user interface and focus where to click on and what does this tool do and all that stuff. So it's a lot easier to get into flow and also to understand the fundamentals of visual communication, like scale, proportion, all the design principles, composition, how to lead the viewer's eye across my image and why. Be very intentional with every line that I make. I'll give you an example, right? I love BIM, building information modeling, right? ArchiCAD or Revit. I'm a big ArchiCAD fan, and it's a super powerful tool. I love it. And I also got to experience it at a professional level in Denmark, in the later stages, like, from concept, but also to building permit and forward. So it's super powerful for communication, effectiveness, collaboration with other professions and all that stuff. But when you are a student, like a first year, second year student, and you have this idea for your concept, and you don't sketch it out on paper on something super easy and simple, and you dive right into something as heavy as Revit or ArchiCAD, the tool really influences your thinking and limits the way how you design. So very often, because you have some default options like, hey, this is like predefined wall and some generic windows, and you have the option to just quickly and simply put it together and call it a facade. And there's your creative process, right? And that's not really it for me. And I was like, yeah, it's great, especially for the later stages, but I really do prefer to use simple tools. It doesn't have to be pen and paper. It can be something else. It can be maybe iPad with some app, because there's still the connection between my hand and my mind, but something that I'm not obstructed. I can get into the flow state and really get my mind straight on what I want to achieve. Hey, what's the idea here? What I'm trying to convey? What's the message? And when I want to be more efficient, faster, when I want to edit it better, when I want to share it with other people, sure, I can go into digital, but I already know what I want to achieve. So that's where it all begins for me. And that's why I think it's still super important to have the basics just with analog sketching, pen and paper, pencil, whatever, and just get those basics down in analog way, because there's just so much more human touch, character, and also the connection between our minds and our hands. That's my point of view.
Perfectly said. I couldn't agree more. And I have a little experience to share. Like I've worked in a couple of firms in recent years, and as an intern, both as an intern and as a junior architect, and I've seen the difference between having sketching being part of the workflow versus going straight into SketchUp or any 3D modeling for messing stages. And the difference is huge. I gotta say that in a particular office, in a particular firm that I was in, it was from my professor, and it was a firm more focused into competitions, professional competitions here in Brazil. And he was partnering up with a very I don't want to say old, but he's got some experience in the field, like he's maybe 60, 70, and he was very analog. And the first stages of the project, you went to a full range of possibilities that as you said, the technical programs, the softwares would be limiting or proposals. And then with sketching, we had so many options to choose from, so many possibilities to move forward in. And that was really, really interesting to see, like in real life, the difference between the two.
Yeah, I think I can add to that. Maybe you can confirm. I've heard about Oscar Niemeyer, that he used to draw everything by hand, obviously, but his team, they actually took his analog sketches, scanned them, and they were tracing on top of them in AutoCAD or any CAD software, right? So to get really the curvature and kind of the elegance of those strokes also in the digital medium. And I think that's also a cool workflow, how to get still, the initial intent into the computer as well.
That can be a little bit controversial, I guess, because here in Brazil we know that story, and then we know that the engineer behind Niemeyer's projects was really, I mean, not to say that Oscar Niemeyer didn't have his talent. He had, but the engineer behind it, and I cannot remember his name now, but he was really good to make all of those drawings come up to life, because I mean, from what I've heard, was that he would sketch and then move the drawing on and do it. And then the people had to figure out how to, I mean, he had obviously very technical skills, and he knew what could be done, but then the engineer had to figure out something to make the building stand up. And so it can be a little controversial, maybe like an architect really as an artist, maybe that detached from reality, but yeah, obviously I think it makes the process really unique, gives personality, it gives a lot of value to the whole thing.
Typical architect attitude, no?
Yeah.
Like at the end, just I'm going to do my sketch, and you guys have to interpret it just how I see it in my mind. If not, then you have to do it all over again. So it's so exciting. But what I think was interesting from what David was saying is how like we're similar between like Oliver, David, and me. Because obviously we try to educate, online on different topics. Maybe if you see like the actual tutorials, maybe they touch on different topics. I don't know, on different on different softwares or whatever. But in the end, what we try to preach, as like I know that for at least for Oliver and me, and of course for you, we try to preach like to stay out of any software, to not get married with any software, or with any technique, but with understanding the fundamentals, understanding the communication of architecture, which is something that I try to like repeat, but maybe people get tired of hearing it because they can't see it from another perspective. Like, oh yeah, communicate. But like when you try to say it, I think it's very interesting, because with your sketching, if you are creating like a digital sketch through Photoshop, if you're trying to find a like perfect point of view from your 3D model or whatever, what we're trying to do in the end, more than any technique, more than anything, is communicating in an idea, right? And this doesn't have to be tied to a software. Doesn't have to be tied to a certain type of pencil that David's using. So if I don't use that pencil, then I can't communicate my architecture well. I have to use like everything that David is using, or everything that Oliver and Steven are using. No, I mean, come on. I mean, if you can communicate your ideas well in a certain from a certain perspective, like I think from Oliver Thomas from Big, I think his favorite tool of communication maybe like Grasshopper, and not Photoshop, or maybe sketching on an iPad. So everyone has different tools of communication. It doesn't have to be sketching, it doesn't have to be Photoshop, it doesn't have to be like physical versus digital sketching, but they can just be different forms, and you just have to find your way of communicating your idea much better. And sometimes it's even a collage, sometimes it's even text. A lot of architects just write maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs of text, and they can communicate their architectural idea more through words than through actual like line drawings. So I think that's super interesting, that everyone can have their own way of communicating their spatial idea.
Yeah, I'd like to. There are just so many points that I could touch upon, but two really quick things. One thing is using tools for like internal communication, either with myself, like I'm trying to actually understand what I'm imagining and trying to understand my own thoughts for my own internal design process. That's like one way of communication. And the other way is more external. Like I'm trying to communicate my idea to a colleague, to a peer, to a client, to architectural jury, to many different audiences. So that's like one way to look at it. And maybe we can use different tools for different ways of communication. But the other point was about the tools like themselves, that I think it was at one point really important for me to realize that any tool has its own limits. And within that potential of the tool, I have my own limitation of how well I can actually use that tool. For instance, I've been using Photoshop, and I love Photoshop for like more than 10 years. I think I'm pretty proficient, but at the same time, I think like I know and I use 50% of what Photoshop can actually do tops, and not on everyday basis. On everyday basis, I use maybe 10, 15% of what are actually the capabilities of Photoshop. And the same goes with pencil. You can create excellent mastery as artists with pencils, but we don't need that as architects. So every tool has its limitation. And obviously, when you mentioned Grasshopper, I wouldn't probably use pencil all the way when I'm doing some parametric modeling, right? Because it doesn't really fit what I'm trying to get into. So it's always like I 100% agree with you that we should not marry to one or two softwares and be kind of rigid in this thinking, but be more open-minded and, hey, like, I'm trying to get to this. What would be the best tool to get me there fastest or in most efficient way?
Yeah, perfect. I think, and then maybe we can jump into the next theme, since you already touched upon it, talking about digital sketching versus regular sketching or analog sketching. And like, before we go into the questions, I gotta say that since I'm very attached to Photoshop and the softwares, I usually prefer digital sketching because it has the option of Control Z. You can undo pretty easily, but not to influence you too much and not to influence the audience here. I want to hear from you. We know that recently iPads and tablets have researched and have the intent to bring back hand sketching. So more people are preferring this method over regular sketching, mostly, I guess, from the undo command. But then, what do you think? Can you do digital sketching as well as normal sketching? Should you go first into normal sketching, and then the next step would be to get an iPad or a graphic tablet, whatever? Or is it the learning curve that it takes time to adapt or not? Like, I want to hear from you, like, what is your perspective on this? Do you prefer one or the other?
Yeah, I would start with actually one thing that I learned not that long ago. And then if you go into the history of Photoshop, how it was created and what were the first tools, you'll find out that it was absolutely based on analog physical photography techniques, including the different exposure, including masking and everything. People done it even in analog way. They just hold something in front of the lens for different amount of time to influence the exposure. They masked out certain things, and they basically use the very same principles that we use nowadays in Photoshop. And we thought, hey, this all came out with Photoshop, and like touching, or what it's called, retouching in Photoshop. Like, we thought, hey, it's all new, that retouching the nice bikini models to the magazines, it all came with Photoshop. But it's not true. Like, retouching is here since Baroque, like since 16th century. People were trying to make themselves look better than they actually were on the paintings. So that's the very, very basics and very foundations of retouching. So I think in most ways, when we develop some digital tools, they always are based on the foundations on the analog tools. So that's just something to keep in mind when we are using Photoshop.
And I think you can even see it from the tablet features right now, right? I think that there's a paper like kind of mat that you can put on side of your on top of your tablet, so it can just feel more like a paper. I think that's so crazy. I mean, at the end, I don't know, maybe tablets can just be like so light that it can be as light as a paper and have the texture of a paper. Like, everything is going to be just like a paper, but it's just going to be digitally communicated. I mean, it's so crazy that we're trying to go back to that texture, to that feeling of drawing on a paper.
Yeah, maybe just like apps, or like an iPhone that does the vibrating thing when you click on an app, so that you feel that you're actually doing a click or something. Maybe like when you're sketching, you have to have the sketching sense, because otherwise, like, you just feel like you're sliding over a glass, and that doesn't really feel that you're doing anything.
Yeah, exactly. And I got my iPad here, and I got also like Paperlike on it, and I've been testing it for the past few months, and yeah, it's much better. And not only the feel, but also the sound, which is super funny. Like, it sounds more like pencil on paper. But what I wanted to say, I probably, you guys use it all the time. Do you use Wacom tablets, or do you use just
I was going to
iPad
ask you
both?
that. You came up on the comment section. I was going to ask you that. What do you think, Steven?
I use an XP pen tablet, which is very similar to a Wacom tablet, but it's not a graphic display tablet. It just has like the space right there. But I've had it for I think a year and a half, 2 years, and I love it. Although it's not as easy as it sounds without having a display on top of it. It's it's a little like a steep learning curve if you want to actually draw just like you draw on a piece of paper, because you have to coordinate your eyes with your hands, and you're while you're seeing your screen, your hand is not visible, so you have to try to coordinate these two things. I want in the future to get a graphic display tablet, because I do want to sketch things out with my pen. I want to be in Photoshop with my pen, but with these kind of display without a display tablet, it's a little bit difficult. I'm not a big fan, honestly, to be honest.
I had a bad experience with it. I gotta say that I have a really small one. It's not here because my girlfriend borrowed for a moment. But since my screen is ultra wide, 21:9, and my graphic tablets is very little, it's really difficult because the proportions are not the same. So you're sketching in a 16:9 format, and then the line comes out in a ultra wide format, and then it's little, and then against a big screen. And I haven't had much practice, but it didn't come out looking great, and it wasn't part of my workflow.
Yeah, I gotta say, I was also like getting used to the transition from analog pen and paper to first Wacom tablets, and exactly the hand-eye coordination. It's a bit tricky. You gotta get used to it, and also just you have programmable the little buttons on the pen as well as on the tablet itself. So getting used to that and having one hand on the keyboard and having all the shortcuts, it gets it wasn't that smooth transition. And I gotta say, I got my Wacom tablet. It's also a small one, but I kind of fell in love with using my iPad instead. One thing is because you're drawing on the screen right away. You can see where you're drawing, so there's no problem with the coordination. And at the same time, even though I'm not an Apple person, I don't have any Apple products, just the iPad. I gotta say they did a really great job with the Apple Pencil and how it can behave, and how what was the variety of brushes and different tools that you can really simulate with that on iPad. So I kind of fall in love with that. And nowadays, when I'm drawing digitally, I mostly use iPad with Apple Pencil, because it's very close experience as to normal analog sketching for me.
Yeah, I think maybe a graphic tablet just takes a little bit. It takes a while for getting used to it. And then once you get the coordinations going, I think it can definitely be a tool that will improve your drawing skills. But then you got to start with a pen and paper, and then you move on to something like that, so that you have the base figured out, and then you use a tool to assist you with that process. And I think maybe with a bigger graphic tablet, I'll have a better experience. And I'm waiting for one to get in, actually. I'll just remember that. So it's coming in the mail. I'll probably do a review or something and see how I experienced that.
Cool, man. Like, what do you think, David? I mean, there are a ton of new generations here, like that are not that old school, that don't want to grab a piece of pen and a paper. They don't even have paper in their house, like these blocks of paper. They just have their iPads, their cell phones, their like big computers, and they're like, okay, so I want to like start to learn sketching. I want to learn sketch good, but is it necessary for me to go through the process of first the paper and the pen, and then maybe the digital iPad, and then whatever? Or can they start like from an iPad? Can they start sketching well from an iPad? Or do you think, or would you recommend to first grab a piece of paper, learn to feel that pen, that paper, and then go on to digital sketching, then buy that iPad Pro that costs I don't know, $1,000? What do you recommend?
Yeah, apart from the budget kind of things, I think when I when I'm trying to kind of confront myself and my point of view, when I would jump right into, let's say, iPad with Apple Pencil and start learning to draw in there, it makes it so much harder than if I started on piece of paper with a pencil, because not only I need to learn how to use that tool and how to actually learn to draw and learn observation skills and composition and shading and everything, perspective and proportion, and there are so many things. But on top of that, I would also need to learn to operate with whatever app I would be using and with the iPad, and touching the screen and the gestures and all that stuff. So that's on top of the drawing part. So I would recommend to make it easy for yourself and start with super simple tools as pencil and paper. Draw what you like, so you're not forced. Just draw what you like. I started drawing, superheroes when I was a kid. I drew Spider-Mans and Batmans and all that kind of stuff because I was really into it. I didn't draw anything else. It was just Batman all day long. But it kept me going, It kept me going. It's about the repetitions. It's about the practice. It's about developing the habit of sketching. And then it was still a little bit of struggle and getting used to drawing on iPad because I didn't know what brush to use. And there are so many brushes. It's overwhelming. I don't know which to choose. This doesn't feel right. This is too streamlined, and it's actually changing my stroke because it can make it more perfect than I actually drew it, right? So there are so many of these obstacles that you kind of have to encounter. And I think it's so much harder if you don't have the analog background at all. So from these point of views, I would really start with pen and paper, pencil, whatever, crayons, whatever you like, and go from there. And sure, if you progress, go with digital. I want to add one more thing. If you look at, and I'm sure you guys also follow so many great digital artists, and I'm sure one of my favorites that I follow on Instagram are Loish and Raphael Lacoste. Raphael Lacoste is the art director behind Assassin's Creed. He's a really cool concept artist. And they are mainly sharing their digital artworks. But time to time, they also share their sketchbooks and their analog work. And it is as amazing as their digital artwork, because that's where they started. That's where it all comes from. So it's a little bit of proof that even the digital artists, they have really, really amazing foundations in analog sketching and drawing or painting.
Yeah, guys, it's if you put in the work, you're gonna get progress. Maybe I've seen that many artists do like a 30-day challenge where they have to draw every single day, just something. It doesn't have to really be a finished product. You just gotta start drawing something, and then you eventually get better. There's no way you do it drawing every day for 30 days, 60 days, whatever. There's no way you're not gonna get better with it.
Exactly.
And then we have not a question, but a comment from the comment section here on the live about the difference between the touch screens. The Nagata was saying that she was thinking about buying a touchscreen laptop, and then so to use that as to sketch. But I know that many digital screens, screens are digital, but many screens have a delay or a lag that you don't feel exactly where you're drawing. It has a little bit of delay. An iPad doesn't have that. So do you recommend really just iPad, or have you ever tested any other screens that could be potentially good for drawing?
Hey, I actually did not. I have a kind of secondary experience with the touching screens on laptop because when I was studying in Denmark, some of my peers and students had it. And I just remember one thing. The struggle was when we were just showing each other something on the screen and you accidentally touched it. It made something, it was some kind of action and you closed it, or you pop up some dialogue window or whatever. And it was kind of annoying. So I know everyone was hyped about it. I think it was around 2016 that a lot of these laptops kind of start to come out. And it was at first my impression, even though I didn't have it myself, my impression was like, oh, it's causing more trouble than it's actually beneficial. That's like secondary point of view. I didn't have it myself. Maybe there are some different options and opinions about it, but I was like, I wouldn't want it for myself. So and I didn't actually try any Android based drawing tablets like competition to iPad, because I'm using iPad because of the apps that are purely and just for iPad. And I mean,
what do you use, like Procreate?
yeah, I use Procreate and Morpholio Trace. Morpholio
Alright.
Trace is a bit more towards architects, as you can work in scale and you can import 3D models and you have augmented reality and all that fun stuff. And Procreate is like for any type of illustration. I see Procreate as the best alternative to Photoshop on iPad, even though I know Photoshop came out with its own app, but it's not as good yet. So I would still go with Procreate any time over Photoshop on iPad.
Wow, those are big words right now. Like
Those
in
are
front of
big
us.
words.
This is crazy. I mean, this has just gotten a little bit uncomfortable for us.
You don't really talk about Photoshop here.
Yeah, we leave Photoshop in the shrine, like on a pedestal. We don't touch it. But I guess.
Photoshop on iPad. Photoshop on iPad.
Oh,
All right,
okay,
all right.
okay. Yeah.
The app version. Okay. So,
But how do you see, like, now that we're talking about Procreate and Morpholio, how is the typical architectural workflow if you want to incorporate the iPad into it? Is it at the beginning? Is it in the detail part? Is it at the post-production part of it? And what part of the architectural process of designing do you insert Procreate, Morpholio, or just like the whole digital sketching?
Gotcha. I still think about using sketching in general within the architectural design process quite at the beginning. Obviously, the first phase is concept, massing, all that stuff, analysis, and that's I think the majority of the kind of dirty sketching, when you're really trying to use that more as an internal process to come up with ideas, to solve some problems, to really develop those solutions as your designs. And at the same time, I really prefer like when you're, how is it called, redlining or marking up your drawings, which are already made digitally. I prefer to do it at first on paper, but it's not really that environmentally great. So I got used to marking up things on iPads, either in Morpholio. Morpholio Trace is really good for that, for instance. So you can really just mark up, make notes, annotations, some changes, all that stuff. So you don't have to be in BIM or in AutoCAD, but you have it wherever you take it with you, and you just draw on top of that. And I think it's great, like for the feedback. So you can see it also in different eyes than on the PC screen or on your computer. So I would use like this hand approach in different phases, but mostly at the beginnings. And really, you can put in the tools like Morpholio Trace or Procreate whenever you feel comfortable with it. I would even like take a pencil, paper sketch, take a photo of it or scan it, place it into, it can be Morpholio Trace or Procreate, and draw on top of it to iterate it and get really the advantage of having the layers and having non-destructive workflow and having the sharing capabilities. And you can export Procreate directly as a Photoshop. So there are just so many ways how to work around with it. So yeah, you have so many options. It's really open for you. So this would be one of my approaches, because sometimes I make a quick sketch on paper and I say, man, I really like it, because I didn't care. It's very loose, and I'm like, hey, there is some kind of dynamic and the character quality and all that stuff. So I want to take photo of it and work on top of that. So that would be one of ways how to use that.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I think it's super interesting, like the whole iPad world. I think a lot of us are dying to buy an iPad, but haven't really wanted to justify it economically, because obviously it's an inversion. But I I'm super interested in that topic, but I know that a lot of people are interested in the business side of what you do as well, and they're interested in like how you, as a graduated architect, have created your own business that, I don't know if you've been with this for about, I don't know, 3 to 4 years. I'm not really sure. I think 5 years. And you've created so many things, so many products. You created books, courses, workshops, etc. And I know that many architects want to follow that route. Maybe not with sketching because they're not perfect at sketching, but they have their own niche. They have their own passion that they're interested in sharing, that they're interested in educating about, but they don't really know where to start. So I would love for you to tell us like the business side of it. If you see it possible for architects to step out of that architectural conservative world and try to do other types of things, other proposals, and how would you start? Like, how does a person start doing, like, being the David Drazil that you are right now?
I appreciate your words, man. Thanks. I think where it really started was at the end of my master studies in Denmark, where I found out that it was a very international environment. Half people were international from all Europe, half were Danish students. And I found out that majority of the students are actually not that used to sketching and seeing it and using it as a tool for design process and presentation. So it caused a few problems within the communication in the group and also externally when we were trying to present something. And I saw it more like, hey, this is a bit of problem. Again, we're going back to clarity and visual communication. And I thought to myself, hey, I was really drilled in sketching in the Czech Republic at the university in Prague. So maybe I could help and share some of basic tips and tricks on how to get started with sketching so they can use it more as a really natural tool, get into the flow and all that stuff. So it started actually with like problem definition and basically scratching my own itch or within that environment, helping other people to get better with something they would really use in both their studies and their practice. So there was like this bulb moment. Hey, I could really help people. And if there are so many people here just in Denmark at the university, maybe there are many more people out there in the whole world who would benefit from it, who would benefit from having some step-by-step tutorials, like introduction to sketching, how to grasp it for the use of architectural design. So with this problem definition and kind of scratching my own itch approach, it started after I graduated and I was unemployed. It was a big struggle. I was an expat in different country, right? Fresh graduate, very little experience. I didn't speak the language properly. We just moved to Copenhagen to look for jobs, but we didn't have any contacts because it was a new city and all that stuff. So I was unemployed, trying to find full-time position as an architect for myself. And at the same time, I saw it as an opportunity. Hey, maybe this is one time in my life where I could dedicate my time to doing something that I otherwise wouldn't have a chance to do when I'm employed, when I have family, when I have kids. And I was a lot more flexible, right? So I just jumped into creating some more educational. It was from the beginning, very educational content on architectural sketching. So I started with the first ebook and online course, and that was the first kind of products that I wanted to put together because I thought it would be really helpful to many people. And it's all started from there. And I just started sharing my process of creating this content on Instagram. That's how I started on Instagram. And I got very like consistent, 5 days a week. And it all started from there, like early 2017. And everything else just grew out of this. And I want to say what I'm trying to do is really listen to my people, my tribe, my audience. They very often just tell me what they want. It goes with the books. Like I got this ebook. It was really popular, really like best-selling on Gumroad and all that stuff. And still many people were like, hey, is there a printed version? I don't want ebook. I want a printed copy that I want to go through, have the tactile experience and all that stuff. I'm a book lover myself, so I understood that point of view, and I thought, okay, how can I turn this ebook into a printed book? And it got me into self-publishing, right? So it's very often really it comes from the audience themselves. They ask me questions all the time via DMs in the comments, and these questions are a great clue about what my audience is struggling with, what they need help with, what I can create content about, or even some products about. So it's kind of, I see it more as a dialogue with the community than just me preaching something. No. I'm trying to share my point of view, and I'm trying to be very receptive to what other people say. And very often it leads to just amazing things. And I mean, this book things, I wouldn't really thought of myself just like, hey, I want to publish a book. As you mentioned in the beginning, it was not my idea. I was just like, it was recommended and it just made sense. And I was excited about it myself. So I gave it a try. And now there are 3 books. It's just insane where it grows. But it all started with a little seed. And now it's just growing into a bigger and bigger ecosystem.
That's really interesting. I guess we always start by solving a problem. I guess like you see the problem in the world, and then you try to solve in your local community, and then you see that the internet can expand you, can launch you into the whole world, and you can reach international people. And then once you get going, I guess you see what are the necessities and what you can, and then where you can move on based on the audience reception. Yeah, I guess it works in many fields, many niches. But it's really cool to hear your experience.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been studying a lot of other people that I follow and that are inspiration to me. And very often it starts like this, like with no ambition, no expectations, just trying to solve your little problem. And you get to realize that this little problem, a lot of people have that. So the more people you serve, the more people get to know about you, you get recommended and all that stuff. So it really starts with helping other people solve a specific problem, exactly as you say.
And for people starting, maybe you can start by giving free value without expecting anything. If you're trying to launch yourself into this content creation career, it's about giving without expecting first. And then once you have the approval, then you can make a living on it, and then you can try to get monetary rewards based on what you already gave before, and then now you're moving forward. I think me and Steven had a similar path, right? Starting out. Maybe.
Yeah, for sure. Where we started as obviously curiosity, but also trying to give value, of trying to like return what we learned from the internet, just because university couldn't teach it to us. So we went through the internet. It taught us a ton of things, and the most fair thing is that everyone like can get a lot of value from YouTube, from Instagram, from all these places. And it's interesting because like we're almost like all 3 are almost in the same position, where we graduated as architects, where we had this preset path mostly. And then this came up. Obviously when I was in school, I didn't for nothing, I thought I was gonna end up being a YouTuber or whatever. And then all this just came up, and we went with the flow, we rode the wave, and here we are. But now, like, the question is, like, what are we going to do? Like, is this the rest of our life? How is our architect career going to develop? And I'm interested in hearing your point of view. Like, you are an architect, obviously, but you're also like a creator. You're also a book publisher. You're also an educator. So how do you see your future as an architect? How do you see what you're going to do from a creator point of view, like in the next 5-10 years? Like, what do you plan on doing? What are your passions? Or do you plan on, I don't know, creating a book on anything else, like cooking? I don't know, whatever. Like, what do you think you're gonna do?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I didn't know, I start with what I didn't know when I was graduating, and that's basically what you just touched upon, is that there are some predefined paths for trained architects. You either go work for someone else as an employee, or you found your own studio, right? That are the kind of 2 ways how it was preached to us, how we were trained. But later on, I realized that all the architects, they are trained to produce architecture production, but it's not, there is more than production. We were trained to, come up with concepts, develop drawings, push it to construction, maybe oversee the construction, and kind of produce architecture. But there are some phases before the production, and there are some phases after the production. And before the production, there is some inspirational phase where maybe you can work and help communities, you can help put together architectural competitions. There are so many ways how you can inspire better spaces for people. And after the production, there is some more propagational, promotional work, promotional efforts. And in these two areas that are before and after production, there are very few architects being active because everyone was taught and trained to produce. So they are producing. So it's oversaturated with architects who are producing. And it's great. We need better spaces for living. And we need to solve a lot of problems with design. That's great. But I just didn't see that there are ways for me to apply my skills also in different areas, in the inspiration and promotion, in a way that I could make meaningful contribution to the let's say architecture society, or in even the world on a big scale, right? So right now I was practicing architecture after the studies. I eventually got hired. I worked in Copenhagen as an architect, and it was great, and I was an employee, and I was very happy. It was basically my dream job that I got eventually. It was a lot of ups and downs in between, but to put it short. And then we moved back to Czech Republic, where I come from, together with my wife. And this Sketch Like an Architect project was kind of growing on the side. And I just went full time into this project to give it a go and see if it can actually sustain a living for us. And that's pretty much the story. But right now I can see so many more options for us trained architects to use our design skills in many different ways, very often entrepreneurial ways. And that was also what we talked last year in the Archimentor Summit, right? It was all about these alternative ways how to make your mark as an architect. And today, thanks to internet, there are just, the possibilities are endless, because we are creatives, we are problem solvers, and very often we also know how to communicate. So there are so many ways how we can use that.
That's really meaningful to hear. And I guess we all hear people saying, professors saying that we can follow different paths. We can maybe work on a movie set as an architect, maybe work with a historian studying about old architecture, classic architecture. But we never actually see the people in real life, like see the people doing this. So I guess that's part of what we're trying to do here. Bring guests that can show in a practical way what have you been, what did you do to follow that path, what was your mission, how did you start. So that's really meaningful to hear, David. So thanks for sharing that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and it's super interesting to always hear someone else's path, being an architect, because people can feel identified, right? I know there are a ton of people from all over the world watching us, from a ton of different economies, a ton of different dynamics inside of architecture. And it's not as easy in every country, right? Like not every country has an Bjarke Engel's office, whatever, where you can just go work in and, be next to the next architect, whatever. But it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard even like actually building a building in some countries. It's getting to that process is hard. And people have a ton of other passions. They want to be like, all right, so I love architecture, but I also love cooking. Like, what can I do? I also love sketching. I also love teaching. I also love a ton of other things. And this is cool. So we can see that we're not tied to a certain path. We're not tied to certain things that we have to do, but we have to just, identify what our skills are, what our gifts are, and how we can develop them and probably sometimes monetize them. And I would love to keep on talking about this. This is super interesting. This is like a conversation that we could talk on for hours. But I know that the people that are watching us have a ton of questions that they have been asking right now. And let's jump onto the questions. Let's jump on to see what questions people have. If you have any specific questions for David, type them in the comment in the chat box, and we will try to see if we can answer that in like these next 15 minutes that we have of the chat. And yeah, well, what do you guys think?
I'm reading through the comments here to see if there are any that we can pass
For
on
sure.
to David. Yeah.
While you select the question, I wanted to touch on a comment that I saw before, which is recommending a book. I thought it was by someone named Elvirita, and she recommended this book, which is called I think I have it in Spanish right now. It's called The Thinking Hand, or La Mano que Piensa, and it's with Giovanni Palasma. I think it's like a very recognized architect, and it's about actually knowing your hand very well, like actually knowing the mental process that your hand goes through with your mind, with your soul, with your emotion when you're kind of drawing. So this is like going back, like in a very short comment, like going back to what we had talked about before, and if we should go to digital sketching or stand-hand sketching or whatever, just maybe try to read this book, because this will maybe they'll maybe define the importance of using your hands inside of architecture, inside of creative purposes, which I think is super, super interesting, and something that we have to dive in more now that we're going into a very digital world. We have to try to stay like using our hand, using our senses.
It goes to the thinking about crafting skills, right? Model making and doing all hands things. So yeah.
It reminds me of, I think it was Austin Kleon in one of his books. Austin Kleon, show your work, steal like an artist. Steven, maybe you have the book somewhere there. But I think in one of his books, he said like, if you didn't work with your hands, you didn't work, or something. I'm paraphrasing in a really bad way, but basically he said like, if you didn't work on it with your hands, it's not proper, So and I feel exactly as you touched upon, in today's very digital oriented world, we sometimes get to disconnect between what we are actually creating because we don't have it in our hands. And it's so good to kind of go back to the roots and work with your hand, even like ceramics and model building or whatever. It's just, you have the different tactile sensation. It's underrated. Yeah.
And we have a comment right here, which is, as a student, sometimes I feel like I'm stuck in looking for an idea when sketching a concept or design. And sometimes it is, it stops me from sketching. What tips do you have, David, on, I think this kind of a difficult creative process that we all go through?
Yeah, this is a great question. It reminds me of a quote that have been, and probably still is, one of my favorites so far. And it is by an architect, Edmund Bacon. And he says, it is in the doing that the idea comes. So, and I just can 100% confirm that it works like this for me. I would like to hear your opinions on that. But it really does work for me that I start with some intention, but actually the good idea comes in the process. And it comes from the work that I'm doing. So I just keep sketching and it leads me somewhere. And eventually it crystallizes into something more clear and clear. And sketching is one way how to do it. It works best for me. But this quote, that it's really in the doing that the idea comes, that's just 100%. It's like inspiration does work, but in order for inspiration, you need to work. You need to show up for the inspiration to actually work. So it's not that we sit and wait for inspiration. That's for amateurs, like the rest of us just get up and go to work. So just sometimes pushing through it, I think that's what's working for me, and especially when it comes to sketching. So just keep doing it.
And maybe that can be applied to many different tasks that we as an architect have to do. Like, for instance, yesterday I was doing some images, some renderings, and I had to do the post-production in Photoshop, and the rendering was looking pretty dull, and I didn't know where to start, and I didn't have inspiration. And then I said, all right, I'll start by fixing those windows. And then I created a folder and did the first layers. And then, all right, I'll just add the vegetation here on this vase. And then eventually, like I saw that I finished the image and it was all flowing as it was supposed to. So I guess just set yourself small tasks to start out. Like maybe just I'm gonna sketch for 5 minutes and see what comes out. And then you're gonna say that you've been there for an hour and doing some amazing things. And it all starts by showing up, as you said.
Yeah,
I see it from another point of view. Like I totally apply that, but when that doesn't work for me, because sometimes it's just like a creative block, and whatever I try to do, push through it, it just doesn't work. What I like when I was in school, I read this text that was like architectural excursions, or I don't know if you say it in English, like excursiones, like trips, architectural trips, where I try to exit architecture, or like what the task that I'm doing, whatever, and try to take a trip anywhere else. Graphic design, movies, I don't know, books, visiting my family, whatever. But when I'm doing that other task, I just try to keep it like in the back of my head, not forget about it completely, but just try to keep it in the back of my head just slightly, so I just don't forget about it. And when I come back to that task, to architecture, I try to maybe bring some of that, what I did in the trip, to that place. So if I am in a creative block doing an image, I usually grab a magazine. I usually see a movie that is very visually stimulating for me, or maybe a series of books, and I try to just look through it, but also taking into account that I'm trying to find inspiration, trying to find like some stimulus for what I'm doing. And sometimes just trying to leave architecture in some sort of way gets me back and gets me much more inspired than if I was just going to try to push through it in whatever way.
Yep. I guess I do that as well sometimes. It's more about the daily thing, the daily process. I usually go outside of architecture, but that's perfect. I think you got it on point. Maybe if you didn't solve it one way, now you have another way to do it.
Yeah. So, and there's another question. There's a ton of questions regarding inspiration, which I would love to touch upon. But there is, this very important question, which maybe one of us would
I was
have
gonna
asked,
pick this one.
would have asked when we were students, when we were just starting, when we were maybe in doubt of what we wanted to do. And it's by Shubham, and he asked, is it worth it to leave architecture and start your own passion-driven venture like the three of you did? And well, this is a very hard question, because I mean, we're not here to tell you what to do, if you should leave or not leave or whatever. But it's something that obviously we three have gone through. But I would love to hear Oliver and David's point of view on it, because it's a very kind of deep question, like a existential question, kind of.
Go ahead, David. I want to hear from you first, because you're
all right,
the primary guest here.
All right. Okay, two things for me that come to my mind. One thing is that I actually was seriously considering diving not into architecture profession per se, but becoming a professional archivist, artist, architectural visualizations, right? I was really into that for pretty much majority of my studies, and I just wanted to create images. So that's one way. And I was trying to apply even to some visualization studios, or as on a position of an archivist artist. And I still had that as a kind of, not plan B, but different option for me. So it's something that I'm still a big fan of, and I just have a beautiful kind of relationship to archivists and CGI, computer generated images. So I'm in no way against it. Just because of I kind of believe in sketching, it doesn't mean that I'm against CGI in no way. So that was one point. And even though it was a plan for like seriously last 2 years of my studies, it actually didn't pan out that way, and was kind of okay. It was just I didn't meet that opportunity, or it didn't meet me. But the second thing what I want to say is it's a lot about self-awareness. And this is a deep question, and I think this is a deep answer. Like really taking the time to getting to know yourself. what are your values, what is your vision, how do you want to design your life, and then use your career or business to support that vision of your life. So yes, work is important for vast majority of us, and even in the fulfillment part, like self-realization part, but it's not the only part in life. And I dare to say it's not the most important part of our life. So I would start with the life itself, how I want to live, with whom, where, how I want to spend my days, whatever, how I'm trying to really discover my gifts, that where I feel natural in my role, in my position, go really deep into my experience and really dig deep into this self-awareness game, and take that as a point of departure for building my vision and for being kind of a bit more open to my options. So it's a deep question, and I think there's no super simple answer to that, but that would be just my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's
Oliver?
a pretty good answer. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be a bit more practical here, and instead of answering the questions, I'm gonna say what I did. And when I was at uni, still studying, I started a YouTube channel, and I saw that it started growing slowly, but I eventually saw a potential there. And once I graduated, I applied for a junior architect position. I got in, and I worked for, I think, 2.5 years, something like that. But at the first year, I saw that I could maybe after work hours do a little bit of work on the channel. And then I would eventually release a video here and there, maybe like once every 2 months or so. But it was slow, but the channel kept growing. And I saw that I could release my first product, the first course. And I didn't have time because I was working, I think usually the work hours here in Brazil are slightly longer. I worked from like 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Yeah, it's a little bit tough. It's not the usual 9 to 5 thing, but we take longer. Yeah, whatever. We take longer lunch, whatever. But that doesn't really comes in. But then after work hours, 2 hours lunch. But then after work hours, I would do more courses, and then I saw that the time wasn't, because I got after work I was really tired, so I was waking up earlier than office hours. I was waking up at 5 a.m. like 5 a.m. club. I was in that routine back then. And then I was working on that course before going into work, so that I had my really the fresh ideas, and I had really energy to work on my side project before going to my daily thing. And then again, once the channel started to grow a little bit more, the course starts selling. I tried to negotiate a day off work and maybe get paid a little less, so that I could dedicate more time. So that way you don't get off your payroll, your monetary sustain, and go after your dreams. You do that cautiously, and then you still can follow both paths and see if that works out. And if it does, it did for me, luckily, and I'm really glad for that. I just quit my job and jumped full time into content creation. So you can do that step by step, and not just jump yourself into a new adventure without having any backup plans.
100%.
Wow.
But that's yeah. I wanted to just second that, because it was basically the same for me. The first 2 years, the Sketch Like an Architect project was a side hustle, and I was working full time. So exactly, early mornings, late evenings is the same. So that's what you have left if you're in that position. But and you believe in that potential, that it might be something bigger eventually. So yeah, exactly as you say, Oliver.
And it doesn't have to be the same field, right? It could be like the question was asking, like maybe cooking, whatever. You can do the cooking as a side thing, and maybe if that pushes up, that goes forward, you move on, and then you jump into the cooking thing. And I know that there are many even actors and many other professionals out there that they are really professional and masters in their field, and they have a architecture background.
Yeah.
And architecture really helps you be a problem solving. Helps you to think about problems in such a process way, in a continuous way. So I think it helps you nonetheless. Like even if you don't follow through architecture, it will help you through your entire working life.
Well, You guys heard it here. No, but I think it's this conversation is like super inspirational, super inspiring. I think many people came here for sketching, but right now they're staying here because they want to know what they want to do with their life, and it's super interesting. And I would love to keep on talking about this. And I have one last question, so we can leave David to his regular activities. And it's by Balan Fernandez. It asks, do you think you have to be a good storyteller or be good at creating narratives to back up your architectural concepts and make them strong? So I know that this is a question that we could answer in a whole, I don't know, 4-hour course, or maybe in 2 years. It's a very like big and deep question, but I want to know your point of view, David, from like you're actually trying to tell stories every day, from sketching, iconic buildings, from sketching like your own kind of designs, and from actually trying to bring in people that are outside of architecture into architecture in some sort of ways, which I think is a way of storytelling, a way of capturing people. So what do you think? What do you think, David?
This is a super good question, and I actually didn't know about storytelling at all when I was still studying architecture. And if I take the question as it is, as it relates to architectural concepts, what I perceive right now, that strong architectural concept is clear in communication, and it's clear in the benefits that it brings. It solves a problem and it has clear benefits. That's the most important for me from an architectural point of view. But what I want to say about storytelling is it's a skill that I'm slowly but steadily investing more and more time in to become a better storyteller, because people love stories. I love stories. I bet you too love stories. Everyone loves good stories. And people don't listen to your advice, but they will listen to your story. So, and one other point is that if you're trying to sell anything, especially online, you just don't push it to their throats, right? Hey, buy my course, or I will block you, or whatever. You don't do that. But if I start by telling a story how I actually sucked at drawing, and that it took me a lot of years and days of struggle, and then I actually found out that I need just these 6 pieces that make all the difference in the basics, and I show it on visual way, then I got the attention, and then I can say, hey, and this actually all the 6 things that are the most important from my 10-15 years of experience, they are here in this course. Go check it out. So if you start with a story that is relatable to someone who might be in a similar position as you were 10 years ago, then it just grows into so much more engaging dialogue and communication, and you have the attention, and it's just so much more powerful than when you're trying to, be one-way direction, one-way advice, or anything like that. So people also say, like, amateurs give advice, and professionals ask more questions and start dialogues to understand more. So it's another way how to put it. So we kind of circle back to listening to your community and to the people and all that stuff. So, but storytelling, when you have a message to say, the best part is to tell a story about it. So super powerful skill to any type of communication, not only architectural concepts.
Yeah, and I think being an architect, you kind of tell stories every time, right? You're presenting a project, you're telling a story. You're selling your project to the client, explaining to the engineer, you're telling a story. I think it's about engaging and communicating better.
Yeah, well, I think I don't want to be I don't want to like go against like what we preach or anything, but I would rather, to be honest, you guys take, like, for example, a person that is trying to tell stories, that is trying to communicate ideas. I would rather that person goes into a course on narrative, on telling stories, on how to tell stories, on analysis of stories or whatever, than how to create a Photoshop image with Photoshop first. Because much more important than creating images with Photoshop, much more important than knowing how to render in V-Ray, or because eventually you're gonna learn how to, is telling a story of your design, telling the story of space. And I would think that is much more important for architects than to actually have a complete dominium of sketching, of Photoshop, of Lumion, or whatever. So if you dominate stories, then I think eventually you're going to be able to tell stories through many different ways. And I would totally support that. We should maybe release a course on storytelling. but yeah, I don't know. This is something that I think we've enjoyed a lot, this conversation with you, David. Thank you so much for coming over here. I expect that we see you again, maybe in Oliver's channel, maybe in your channel. If you guys have no idea, David is kind of he's kind of like a very old person in Instagram, because he has a lot of Instagram followers. He's just like this master of Instagram. I think he even has a course on how to be
You've
good.
probably
Instagram.
seen already his drawings, like probably somewhere.
They're viral. They're viral.
Yeah,
they're everywhere. But he's more or less new to YouTube, and we're trying to give him the best welcome to the YouTube world, to the YouTube community, which we know is very, very kind, very generous, very, very cool to be with, as you guys can see here in the comments. So if you guys want to visit David's channel as well, I left it in the comments. There will be a link in the comments where you can learn, I think, anything about sketching, anything about creative blogs, a lot of things that David will be talking about. And I would love for you guys to visit his channel. Obviously, also visit Oliver's channel, where he's creating super valuable content on representation, on architecture, on so many different things. And what we're trying to do is trying to give value, create a community, and bring people here to these conversations that can first show you like a different way of seeing architecture, a different way of being an architect. And also just trying to create nice conversations where you can, I don't know, be at work, be with your dog or whatever, and hear us on the side. And, it can be kind of entertaining, fun, and kind of relaxing, just informal, like trying to take off this formality of architecture. So thank you, David. Say thank you. I don't know if Oliver, if you have any final words for us.
I'm gonna finish this live saying that, as Steven mentioned, we're doing this as a regular thing. So Thursday, we're gonna do a talk with Milos from Balkan Architect. I think most of you already know him, right? So he's the guy from Revit. He knows all about Revit, and we're going to talk about BIM, Revit versus ArchiCAD, which is polemic, but we got to bring that up. So if you guys want to continue that conversation and ask questions to Milos from Balkan Architect, check us out on Thursday on my channel, Upstairs channel. If you follow us on Instagram, you're going to have all the links there, and eventually here on YouTube as well. So Thursday, I think, well, I'll let you know about the time, but it's probably the same time, around the same time.
Yeah.
And thank you, David. It was a pleasure. I mean, it was really fun. I hope everyone enjoyed. I certainly did.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's been really, very cool, relaxed conversation with you, and thank you for all the space that you offered, and for having me. So it's a pleasure is mine. Thank you so much.
Yeah, God, it was our pleasure. Oh, Steven, we got to bring Eric, man. Everybody's shouting out for him.
We have to bring in. There's so many people that we would love to bring in. And if you guys know any of them, just try to message them through DM, through whatever, and try to say, hey, you guys should go on the talk show or whatever this is called of Oliver and Steven, because we want to talk with interesting people, talk with people that can bring a lot of value. And obviously Eric would be super interesting here. So thank you so much.
We knew David was a really good guest, so we started off with him, and eventually we'll bring more interesting people as well.
Yeah, he's one of those viral guests that everyone knows, and you have to have David if you want to have like a chat. So we're very honored. We're very honored to have had David here, and we hope the best for his book career. We hope the best for his YouTube career, for his Instagram career, and obviously for his family, his loved ones, etc. So thank you so much, David. Thank you, Oliver. And nothing. We will see you in the next video. All right. Have a great day. And remember to see you in the next chat. Bye.